What's going on, everybody? My name is Matt, and welcome to part 2 of this JavaScript tutorial series. In this episode, we're going to be talking about comments and data types. Now, these things have nothing to do with each other, but to talk about comments would take me about 2 minutes, 3 minutes tops, and I just don't see the point in having that in its own video, so we're going to cover them both in this. I promise it's not going to be too much for the comments part. The data types part is the bulk of what we're going to be talking about, but I think it's important that we talk about comments as well because we're going to be using them quite a bit as we start to code. So let's just say you were to have, hundreds of lines of code, and you didn't have any notes or anything to say what your code does, and you leave for 6 months and come back and you look at your code and you're like, I have no idea what's going on here. I wish there was a way that I would have put some kind of notes in my code. Well, fortunate, JavaScript, and basically other coding language as well, has a way for you to log notes within your file without it messing up your code at all. These are just text lines that you're going to be entering to explain what's going on, to explain things that the person behind you or even yourself need to know. And it's just going to be super helpful for you to have these notes in your code. And so it's a good practice to have good notes. Maybe not have too many notes because you could have a comment on every single line, and then it's like, oh, this is way too much. I don't need this many notes. I just need a couple of notes to explain the flow of my program. But let me just show you how to do that here. So above console.log, I'm going to put 2 forward slashes, and then I'm going to type something like this: testing my terminal with a greeting log. Okay, well, this is explaining exactly why I put this here to begin with. And when I leave and come back, I'm going to be like, okay, this is a test for the terminal. This doesn't really have to do with anything else that I might put here in my code. Now, you can put this comment either above it, you could put it below it and have just random letters or something, and you can also have it to the right of it, but you can't have it in front of this because the moment that you put the 2 forward slashes in front of your code, it's going to assume that you're typing a comment and it's not going to run that code at all. And that's actually a good thing because there are times where we want to be able to use code later on without having to erase it and then retype it later. So we might just comment it out. Now, the way that we do that, let me go ahead and remove this line. If I wanted to remove this, but not entirely erase it, but I wanted to have it to use later, I can do what's called commenting out. The way that I would do that is I would highlight this, then I would hit Control and forward slash, and it would comment out this line. Now, obviously, you can put 2 forward slashes in front of every single line of code, but let's just say that you have multiple lines. Whoops, did not mean to do that. So you have multiple lines of console logs, and you wanted to do this, it would take forever to go through and just say, okay, boom, 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 when you could have just went, boom, in one sweep stroke. Now, if you wanted to have a multi-line comment, you can do that by doing forward slash and star, and then you could have whatever you want to have. Let's just say a bunch of random stuff, and then you're going to end it with a star forward slash. So you're going to have a forward slash on the outside, a star on the inside of each forward slash, and then all of your stuff inside of these lines. So you could do this for multiple lines here. You really only want to use this whenever you're typing a paragraph, maybe at the top of your code to explain what's going on. The reason why you wouldn't probably want to do this, let's just say I do this here. Oops, I did it backwards. Let's say boom, and then we go down here and we put star forward slash. This is not really helpful if you want to be able to, let's just say I wanted to uncomment out this middle console log for whatever reason. Well, the moment I hit control and forward slash, all it's going to do is add the 2 forward slashes in front of it, and it's not going to uncomment this out. So if you wanted to uncomment it out, the best practice to do, honestly, is when you first comment out lines of code, is just highlighting them all, hitting control forward slash, letting it add 2 lines in front of it. That way, if you ever decide to uncomment out one line, you could just hit control and forward slash, and that one line would be uncommented out. Anyways, that's enough talking about comments. I know I spent a lot more time than I anticipated there. Let's go back to what we had before. Let's remove these 2 lines here. Actually, you know what? Let's remove all of this because we don't really need this for data types. Let's talk about data types now. This is a really important part of the lesson, and you're going to need to know this for basically every other lesson we have going forward because you're going to be using data types all the time. Every single program you run is going to use a data type of some kind. So this is a very important concept. So let me explain what this is. A data type defines the kind of value that a variable can hold. Now we're going to talk about variables in the next lesson, but it's a kind of value that a variable can hold. This will make a whole lot more sense as we discuss them, so let me just show you what I mean by kinds of values. So let's start with talking about what is known as a string. A string is anything that you have within single quotes or double quotes. Let me give you the technical definition of a string so that way this can maybe be helpful. A string is a sequence of characters used to represent text-based data. Strings can contain letters, numbers, symbols, and spaces. You can represent a string with double quotations, single quotations, and backticks. Now, we actually looked at this earlier when we typed the words "Hello World." It's now this part's really important. If you wanted to have, let's say, double quotes within your string, you have to make sure to switch these outer quotation marks to single quotation marks or backticks. Otherwise, if I were to add, let's just say, 2 / here for some other data, we're going to run into a big problem because it's going to say, okay, the first string is the word hello. Then we have some random characters here, and then we have another string that is space world, and it just doesn't work the way that you would intend. But if I were to change these to single quotes, then suddenly it puts everything in here correctly. The same is true if I were to change these to backticks. And the backtick, by the way, is right next to it's in the same key as your tilde. You're just not holding shift. Type this. Normally with the tilde, you would hold shift in this key. It's the key next to your 1 on the top bar. It's not on the right-handed keyboard, but the little number keyboard, but it's on the top number keyboard next to the number 1. If you need to know where that's at, you probably could pull up a picture and you'll be able to find it very quickly. I don't have a way to to show you my keyboard to point this out. But there are some conventions that we need to know about strings. Now, a lot of the times in JavaScript, you're going to see people use single quotation marks. It doesn't really matter if you use single or double quotation marks. You technically could even get around having the double quotations inside of the other double quotations, but then you have to use something known as an escape character, which we're not talking about in this lesson because that is a whole other lesson down the road. But it's just the right convention within JavaScript, or I guess I wouldn't say a right convention. It's the preferred convention within JavaScript developers to just whatever you do on the outside, don't do on the inside. Now, there is a difference between the single and double quotes and then the backticks. The backticks are able to do something that the other ones actually cannot. The backticks can do what is known as interpolation, but it also can do multi-line strings. So if we're doing a console log, let me just show you what this would look like. If I were to do console.log and then put in backticks, let's just say hello, and then a new line, world, whenever we run this code, we're going to see hello, and then it added this space automatically here, so if I were to remove this, it should fix this. Yeah, hello and world above each other, directly vertical. But if I were to change these to double quotes, for example, then it's just not going to work because we started a new line. It's not made to go multi-line. You have to have the backticks. But the backticks are also able to do what I mentioned before, interpolation, which is when you can put a variable or some kind of logic within a string. The way that you would do that is you would just do a $sign and then open and close curly braces, and then you would put the logic here. So, like, let's just say I wanted to put 5 plus 5 here. It would be able to put that 5 plus 5 result here in your string. But it's not something that we're going to worry about right now. We're going to talk about this a little bit more once we talk about variables in the next lesson. But it's just good to know that the backtick The backtick is the one that I prefer in most cases because I use interpolation a lot. But if you're not using interpolation, then the single and double quotes are definitely going to be not even preferable. They're okay to use. I guess there really is no wrong way to do strings. If it works, it works. But there are conventions that most JavaScript developers follow. And we're going to learn about a lot of those as we start moving forward, especially when we talk about how variables are written. You don't have to follow the conventions, but if you're looking for a job as a JavaScript developer, or maybe you're trying to go and create a program in JavaScript, if other developers want to use your code, it can get really frustrating if you're not following the same convention they are. But again, you do you. It's not my choice whether you follow that or not. But anyway, I spent too much time on strings. Let's move on to the next one. The next one we have is what is known as a number. Now, a number is exactly what it sounds like. It's both an integer or a floating point number. It could be any kind of number whatsoever. So when I say integer, I mean any whole number. So like 1 and 2 and 4 and 123. Like those are all considered numbers. Now, a floating number, this is still of type number. It's the same data type, but that would be something like 3.14 and 4.2367. Like these are all considered numbers. It all is encompassed in the number. So for now, I'm just going to put the number 12 just so that you can see this as we're going through these. That's what a number is. Then we have what is known as a Boolean. Now, a Boolean is any value that is true or false. So if it's true or false, then that is a Boolean. That is the only thing a Boolean can be, is true or false. And you might also see sometimes if true is converted to a number, which we're going to learn about type conversions later, then you're going to see that true is also the same thing as 1, and then 0 is the same thing as false. But for data types, it's just going to be true and false. If you put 0 and 1, those are going to evaluate to number by default, unless you use some kind of type conversion, which again, we're not talking about in this lesson, but just wanted to make you aware of that. Then we have what are known as objects. An object is anything inside of curly braces and is usually within the curly braces, it has what are known as key value pairs. So let's just say we have something like city, colon, and then New York in a string. This is known as an object because it has a key, the city, and a value, New York. We're going to talk about objects a whole lot, and it's going to have its own lesson down the road, but this is what the data type object is. I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. Another one that we're going to be encountering sometimes is what is known as undefined. Now, an undefined is a value that is automatically assigned to a variable that has been declared but has not been initiated. So we're not going to talk about variables in depth here, but let me just show you what that would look like. If I were to write a variable and say x, unless I put that x equals something specific, this is considered undefined because it has no value associated with the variable. Again, we're going to learn about that more in the next one, but this will always evaluate to undefined. And then we have what is known as null. And this is anything that you intentionally put within your variable that has nothing. It has no value at all, but it's intentional. It is the absence of a value that is intentional, not it's been declared but hasn't been initiated yet. So it's technically an unintended behavior. You could do that on purpose and have it on purpose be undefined, but typically undefined is something that is not on purpose, and null is something that is on purpose. That's not always the case, but null just simply means I am purposefully saying that I want the value of something to be nothing. And then finally we have, and this is not the only data types that we're going to ever look at, but these are the ones that we're going to be looking at for the foreseeable future in our lessons. Next we have what is known as NaN, or you can call this not a number. Now, it's exactly what it sounds like, but it just means that it's not a number. This is a value that represents undefined or unrepresentable numeric results. So let me just give you an example. If I were to do console.log and I were to say, I don't know, we'll just say in parentheses, we're going to run a math problem here. We're going to say string h, and then we're going to multiply 2. If I were to say, okay, I want to find out what is h times 2, when I run this, we're going to get first we're going to get hello world from way up here because I forgot to comment this out. Let me go ahead and comment this out so that you can see it. I mean, you can see not a number here, but just for the sake of this example, we're going to run this and we're going to see the result is not a number because h times 2 does not even make any sense. You're going to get some kind of numeric result that is not a number. And so that's basically what it means when you have not a number. It's converting something to a number and it not even make any sense. You can't convert a letter to a number. You can convert some things to numbers, like true and false can be converted to 1 and 0, but in the case of strings and letters specifically, it doesn't make any sense to do math problems with letters unless you're doing like algebra. But I think you know what I mean when I say like h times 2 means nothing. So yeah, those are all of our data types. But if you ever want to find out what type something is, let me go ahead and comment this out because we don't want to see this non again as we're doing this. But if you want to find out what the type of something is, you would type in console.log and then do type of, all lowercase, and then whatever it is you want to check. So let's just say I have an object and I want to do city, New York. Whenever we check this, it's going to tell us that we have an object. Or if I were to have something like, let's say we have the number 7. When I run this exact same thing, it's going to give us a number. If I do, let's just say non, when I run this, we're going to get of type number. And this is something that's important to know as well because, I mean, I guess it's not super important that you know what this is, but the way that they determine if something is not a number is by referencing the number data type. So not a number by default is of type number, but it's obviously saying this is not a number. I hope that makes sense, but it's a number that's not a number. It's saying that whatever is not a number is now of type number, but the value isn't an actual number. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. There's another one that I want to show you here that you're going to get an unusual result in, and I don't want to tell you without showing you, and that is if you try to check the type of null. Now you might think whenever you run this, you're going to get the result null. But when you run this, you're going to get type object. And this is actually a bug where back when JavaScript was first developed and when null was first introduced, it ran into some issues whenever they were initializing everything, and it became of data type object. And at this point, if they were to try to fix it, it would ruin the backwards compatibility of anything that has null in it. So they just left it. So now if you were to ever check the type of null, it would be of type object. But if you're using type null within something else, then it's going to function as a type null. But null by itself is of type object. It's a bug. It's not something that was intentional, but it is something that is good to know whenever you were to try this. But let's do one more example so you can see how this works. If I were to do undefined, we were to run this, we're going to get of type undefined. But yeah, so that's going to be it for data types. Hopefully this makes a little bit of sense. If you need to watch this again, I suggest you go back and watch this again. If you understand it, great. You can move on to the next lesson. Maybe play around with this type of and start getting crazy with some things that you can put in the console log and see what the type of those things are. And if you have to, maybe go down here and start practicing how to write an object and how to write Boolean values and numbers and strings. Start to get some practice with those because we're going to be using those quite a bit. But for now, that's going to be it for this lesson. I hope you guys found this helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. See ya.